Before we begin, thank you very much to Thunder Bandit for joining the Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you very much. You know, the funny thing about posting these things in advance, I have no idea what day this is, so I can't really tell you where the Patreon list is at the moment, but I do thank everyone for contributing to it. I will invite you to stick around if you're only pitching in just to keep the streak going or just pitching in and then leaving. Please stick around, even if it's just for like almost a month, because I do have rewards and I do have unlocks if we hit bigger numbers. So you can contribute to that without having to, pay up again. It's all your choice. But I appreciate everyone who sticks around because I have some very cool things that are going to happen if we get high enough. Okay. So recently we had a death battle that everyone linked me and everyone asked me about because it was Frieza versus Megatron. And of course, if a Transformer character is going into death battle, that's going to get my attention. Of course it is. Now we should mention that Wiz and Boomstick have been friends of the channel in the past. I've gotten to talk to them twice, thanks to the people over at Team Dynamite and Metrocon. Very cool guys. And if you haven't seen those interviews, if you're really here just to hear one more YouTuber's hot take on why the fight didn't go the way it was supposed to, then please do check out the interviews that I've done with them in the past. I find them very entertaining because it's very fun when you get YouTubers together, because we just kind of get each other's psychoses, in a very fun way. But cheap plug aside, I've talked to them. They're really nice guys. Clearly, they do a lot of planning and thinking about this show. So keep in mind, whatever I say in the following rant, it is not a slight against them. I know they work very hard on this series. I know they are good people, and ultimately, they're just trying to make a fun video. Ultimately, they're just trying to make some sense of it so they can get the outcome that they think is correct. But for the most part, they're just trying to have fun with the concept. Okay, so let's actually discuss this. So, Megatron versus Frieza. Now, on paper, there's two aspects to this. At the top of the paper, you put the names together, and that actually makes sense. Two alien tyrants, who want supreme dictatorship of the entire universe. It makes perfect sense to put them in a death battle and put them one-on-one against each other. I will say that I was telling friends when this death battle was announced, I really said this is a total mismatch. This is an absolute mismatch. You're looking at the one YouTuber as a Transformer guy who will tell you that not only did this fight end the way it was supposed to end, but I think it should have ended way, way sooner. Way sooner. Because there's ridiculous things to this that I don't think were properly accounted for. So let's look into this just a little bit. So obviously they do a lot of research into this. They do a lot of calculations to see exactly what kind of things that the characters can do, the abilities they have, how fast they can go. They really like showing you speed and explosion power, mathematics, and to their benefit. Like they actually do have they do have a lot of intelligent decisions going on in these death battles. But then again, sometimes they miss things, or sometimes I don't think they read into things enough. So we have a list of Megatron's abilities on here, and a lot of it's demonstrated across all these different fictions that Megatron has appeared in. The one that the second to the last is the one I take a little bit of umbrage with because they list Panic Bubble. This is taken from the IDW verse, where Megatron was able to use a panic bubble in order to keep Tarn in while he essentially attempted to self-destruct with Antimatter. That's not his ability. Megatron cannot create panic bubbles because those are force fields That's Trail Cutter's ability, or Trail Breaker if you're following the G1 version. In IDW it was Trail Cutter, because that was the name at the copyrights at the time. So Megatron at that point had actually taken Trail Cutter's force field emitter off of his dead corpse in order to employ it himself against Tarn, meaning it is not one of his natural abilities and probably shouldn't have been accounted for in the death battle, meaning Megatron should have been dead here. This is the final attack, by the way. Or no, not final attack. Should have been the final attack. This is the second. This is the second attack. He used that panic bubble to block Frieza's blast. And we actually don't really know if this panic bubble would have stopped Frieza's blast or not. We have no relevance on, like, if this shield actually has enough power to do that. If we're judging by the power level of Trailbreaker's shield in G1, that could be broken with constant fire. So if this blast was powerful enough, and, you know, Frieza shoots just planet-destroying blasts here, then yeah, this probably should have cracked the bubble. That being said, this goes into power scaling, which is always a fun debate in Dragon Ball. Keep in mind, Frieza is in his final form here, which is already very powerful, but we're dealing with Dragon Ball style power levels. Remember, Vegeta in his very first form, no power-ups at this point, no extended training at this point. Even in this form, Vegeta was capable of destroying a small planet just by concentrating all of his energy into one shot. That's a lot of power, and remember, a bunch of Earthlings plus Goku managed to beat this guy. And then we got to Planet Namek, where a lot of things overpowered him, including Frieza himself, quite easily, I should add. So no, power leveling is ridiculous in Dragon Ball. See, that's the thing. In Transformers, we really only have one planet destroyer creation, thing ever, and that's Unicron. That's literally Unicron. That's it. Or maybe a rogue Cybertron in robot mode on a very rare occasion. Might rip a planet in half. But for the most part, it's Unicron. No, like, normal-sized Transformer has ever demonstrated any kind of power capable of wiping out a whole planet. The closest we ever saw was Galvatron being able to wipe out the planet Thrall. And that's not really a planet. It's barely the size of a moon. Like, you can see the pools that they were, essentially throwing each other in during this little sparring match between Galvatron and the Sweeps. It's not that big. It's really not that big. So destroying it as, like, demonstration of Galvatron's power is impressive in context. It doesn't come close to what Frieza can do. You know, because remember, it's not, we're fighting perfect, we're fighting, that's Cell, I'm sorry. We're fighting Final Form Frieza, which of course isn't the final form. Then we got to Gold Frieza, and now we're at Black Frieza, which at the moment is the most powerful fighter in the known universe, able to beat Goku, who at the time had mastered a power only angels were capable of, and Vegeta, who potentially has found a power within him even stronger than that. And remember, these characters were all capable of one-shotting a planet 20 years ago. You good, 3D printer? You almost done? 3D printer is almost done. Alright, but seriously, Frieza is so, like Frieza's off the scale at this point. So, like, I really feel like the only reason they went to Black Frieza during the fight was just to have fun with it, and because people would be upset if Frieza didn't go all out. Truth be told, he shouldn't have had to go all out. I seriously think base form Frieza is stronger and able to kill Megatron. So, I mentioned they kind of mess things up once in a while, or they get a few things wrong. And this is largely because they pull from every source in order to make the death battle itself more fun and interesting. So, pulling random abilities helps them out. In this case, they pulled from 3 different sources as far as I can tell, primary sources anyway. One of them is the G1 comic book here to show the power of the fusion cannon being able to wipe out a town a city by itself. It also used data from the G1 cartoon, and it also used IDW's comic verse for information. The problem is, the scaling on those three sources is entirely different, you know? Like, in the G1 cartoon, everyone was as powerful and durable as they absolutely had to be. You think about how many times Transformers got shot by Megatron's arm cannon and basically walked it off, and then suddenly in the 86 movie, Megatron is able to just, is able to kill them in one shot. Or, like, no, like, not even that. Not even that. You know, it was, what was it? Like, Scrapper with a basic pistol managed to one-shot Prowl? You know, like, that doesn't happen. You kill Prowl with one shot all of a sudden? You tell me the Decepticons just now found the kill setting on their phasers? I don't know. And it's weird. But like, it's the original G1 cartoon is just wildly inconsistent. So they used this explosion to demonstrate how durable Megatron is, because the blast of this explosion was capable of throwing Cybertron back across the galaxy, back into its proper place in the universe. And he survived the explosion, so they calculated his durability based on that. The problem is, Megatron's been damaged by far weaker things than this, and even debilitated by far weaker things than this. In one episode, in Divide and Conquer, he literally lost because he ran low on Energon. His power levels are finite. You know, all Frieza would have had to do was wait him out, really. Another one, let's try Roll For It, where we dealt with Antimatter. Well, Megatron, when the Antimatter reached ignition temperature, started expelling it from his body, but he was still point-blank range when it went off, and it debilitated him to the point where he could barely call for a retreat. Yeah, he survived the explosion, but the explosion was far, far smaller than the one that they demonstrated in the death battle, but it seemed to do more damage to him, because that's what the story and the plot called for at the time. It had to do damage at that time and cause the retreat. And Megatron's retreated for far less than this, and he's been far more damaged than this. He's been drunk. The guy is not invincible. Speaking of, they did bring up Antimatter, and they brought that up as Megatron's trump card. Now again, they were using the true scientific principle behind Antimatter, which is if it comes in contact with real matter, then they wipe each other out. So it doesn't matter how powerful Black Frieza is, Antimatter can still damage him and destroy him. Now, I think he let it get too close. I think this stuff is so slow moving that he would have been able to get away from it no matter what he did and take no damage whatsoever. But, again, that doesn't make for an interesting fight. The problem here is they kind of forget exactly what the Antimatter does. So, Megatron, once he unleashes it, does not really have control over the Antimatter. He's only used it a handful of times, twice in the Marvel comic books, once in the IDW books that I can remember, which is the time you see here. When he used it here, this is when he used the panic bubble, because he was intent on keeping Tarn inside the bubble when he set the Antimatter off. 1, to destroy himself as well, but 2, to prevent the Antimatter from destroying anybody else. It was a self-sacrifice move, trying to protect everyone else from the lost light. And the only reason he survived this is because Rodimus teleported into the bubble and teleported Megatron out. That's literally it. Megatron knows he cannot control this. It is a last resort that he unleashes when he himself is ready to go down with the ship. So if he unleashed this, again, that should have killed him. Because once it's reached this point, he can shut it off, but he can't control it. You know, at that point, it should have been done. Now, even when Death Battle is pulling from a lot of different random sources and trying to make it all make sense together, even they start breaking their own rules. One of the things they mentioned about Megatron's fusion cannon, as powerful as it is it does have a limit to how often it can be fired. There's a cooldown period between shots, so he cannot rapid fire it. They then proceed to cut to a spot where he's rapid firing it. Things like this will remind you they're only trying to put on a show. They're really just trying to put on a cool-looking fight between two really popular pop culture characters. Because they break their own rules after setting them sometimes. So, you know, that kind of thing happens. They also mentioned Megatron being able to go up against enemies who had the power of an entire universe behind them, which they mean the Dark Cybertron Shockwave. The problem is, he didn't beat that Shockwave through words. He didn't beat that Shockwave... Well, he didn't beat that Shockwave through raw combat or force. He beat him through words. He beat him through action. And working his weakness against him, which is his overwhelming logic. You know, so really that doesn't even apply. The fact that you could beat an enemy that had that level of power behind him doesn't really apply here. Truth be told, when it just comes down to it, Dragon Ball Z characters are on a completely different level. You know, their power level is absurd, even by anime standards. You know, and Frieza is way stronger than anything that any Transformers ever faced. If Final Form Frieza could blow up a planet the size of Namek, I'm perfectly willing to believe that Black Frieza could blow up Unicron with a thought. I don't think he would need a Matrix at that point. So that lies in the question of the video. I've spent this entire video saying why Megatron should have lost, which is probably not what you expected when you clicked on it. But the title of the video is, could any Megatron actually defeat Frieza? And the truth is no. He's way too powerful. No Megatron's gone up against a literal world destroyer that's the same size as him, or smaller than him. You know, it's just not a thing that happens in that fiction. But there is one, and only one, that could stand a chance. And I'm surprised they didn't go to it. And I know I've brought this up as kind of like a thing already this weekend, but I'm going to bring it up again because it's the only one that makes sense. And it's Alternity. Remember what Alternity is. It is the culmination of hundreds of different universes bringing all of their different characters together. So, like, Alternity Convoy is literally hundreds of Convoys and Optimus Primes with their consciousness and power merged until the point they are literally demigods that exist on a completely different plane and can flow through space and time as if it was swimming through a pool. That's how powerful they are. This Megatron... Alternity characters have battles across time. So Megatron could take a swing at Optimus Prime and catch him on the chin during the Renaissance period. That's Alternity's fight. So literally Megatron could just sit there in the past and just like punch and pummel Frieza from the distant past or distant future. It really doesn't matter. Just a point where Frieza doesn't exist. To the point where there's no way Frieza could fight back from that. And even then, because the power scaling between these universes is so different, you know, I don't even know if that would be enough. You know, Dragon Ball Z characters are just another level. Just like another level. So yeah, I will say, a total mismatch. Total mismatch. Frieza would win this 10 times out of 10, no matter how much military intelligence, cunning, or power sources Megatron gains. And don't give me the antimatter thing, because it works differently in different universes, clearly. So we can't even take our universe as constant when it comes to antimatter to judge that one. Point being, it was still a fun fight to watch. Even if I agree with the outcome, but disagree with how difficult the outcome was to reach. So, there you go. You'd have to go to literally god-tier Transformers to stand a chance against Frieza. That's literally the only thing that would work. So, there's my rebuttal, which is not really a rebuttal. It's an agreeance in a weird way. That's just how it goes. So, thank you everyone for watching. As always, I will see you next time.
We parlay with the captain.
You would think a werecroc is going to listen to elvish rules of piracy.
Of course it would be the freaking elves that invented parlay.
I had to think of a quick replacement for the French.
Oh.